Located in the northern hemisphere of the continent Asia, Cambodia is known as the Kingdom of Wonder. With year-round warm climate, forests which will have tourists captivated in its wonder and beauty, and the biggest and most famous temple in Cambodia, Angkor Wat, Cambodia is a place full of fascination. However, it wasn't always like this. Cambodia was ruled for a period of time by one of the world's worst leader, Pol Pot. Cambodia is still affected by the traumatizing event which occurred on April 17, 1975, after the country collapsed under the rule of the Khmer Rouge, also known as Cambodian Red. Saloth Sar, also known as Pol Pot during the Dark Ages of Cambodia, was born on May 19, 1925, in the small village of Prexabaf, which is 100 miles north from the capital of Cambodia, Phnom Penh. His family had ties with the royal family because his younger sister lived with the king as a concubine, as well as his brother was a lawyer. In 1934, Saloth moved to Phnom Penh to continue his studies as a Buddhist monastery, which is a person who withdraws from society to give all their time into practicing their religion and beliefs. Saloth was not a very successful student, so he switched his studies into radio technology. Saloth continued his Cambodian education in Paris when he received a scholarship in 1949 for radio technology. When in Paris, Saloth studied radio technology and working with communist circles. Saloth enjoyed Paris. He was very fond of dancing and drinking red wine. While studying in Paris, Saloth met friends who enjoyed politics. Soon, Saloth joined Marxism. 1953 was the year Saloth returned back to Cambodia from Paris. A year after, Cambodia received full independence after being a French protectorate. November 1954 was the start of Prince Norodom Sihanouk's 16-year rule of Cambodia. At this time, Saloth went by the name Pol Pot, which will soon be heard of from around the world. Now known as Pol Pot, Paul wanted nothing to do with the Cambodian government. Being the first circle Marxism to return to Cambodia, he recommended others to help join into overcoming the government. In August 1953, Pol Pot left without any warning and went to accompany the Viet Minh. The Viet Minh was formed to take complete independence from the French and become its own country without control from another. He and his other circle Marxism friends left their families behind to join the group. Once arrived, the group noticed the camp had been segregated with the Vietnamese at a higher ranking than the Cambodians. But Pol Pot wasn't all that powerful and noble yet. He too was assigned as a farmer and was working with the Viet Minh. However, he noticed how the Vietnamese worked and punished the Cambodians. The Viet Minh was forced to disperse after the 1954 Geneva Accords, which is a document which separated Vietnam into two zones. Pol Pot and the Circle Marxism were forced back to Phnom Penh. In 1955, a mandatory election was called for after the 1954 Geneva Accords, which rejected Cambodia's revolutionary fervor. With Paul's return in Phnom Penh, he set his mind upon reshaping the policies of the election in the best way he can, which led him to gain access with the Democratic Party for help. However, Prince Norodom Sihanouk became king to be directly involved with politics and had set up the election. By then, Pol Pot and his circle Marxism men knew the only way to get Cambodia is through rebellion. Pol Pot was married in the year 1956 to Kieu Panery. The ceremony lasted for 3 days and ended on July 14, 1965. Kieu was the sister of one of Paul's Paris student friends. The pair were never known to have children together. The years following the election, Pol Pot led two lives. He was a teacher by day, which he was favored by many of his students. When the night arose, Paul was heavily involved with a communist group, the Kampuchean People's Revolutionary Party, also known as the KPRP. By 1959, Prince Norodom Sihanouk wanted any political groups or movements gone. Many of the leaders of the political movements are on the run because of being exiled or fleeing from the country due to rebelling against the government. Pol Pot took action with the Kampuchean People's Revolutionary Party and became leader. In 1966, the Kampuchean People's Revolutionary Party renamed itself into the Communist Party of Kampuchea, otherwise known as the CPK. Later, the CPK became more commonly known as the Khmer Rouge. In English, the Khmer Rouge means Red Cambodian. In March 1962, Pol Pot was wanted for questioning. He fled to the forests and hid, planning an attack which would exile Prince Norodom Sihanouk's government. By 1963, Pol became head of the party. North Vietnam helped Pol Pot form a base camp on the border of Cambodia in 1964. During this time, the Khmer Rouge began to develop gradually. Paul and the Khmer Rouge wanted to plan their revolution against the Cambodian government. Paul sought the Vietnam's help but was rejected. Paul visited the Communist People's Republic of China to try and seek their help. However, Pol Pot instantly fell under the influence of the great proletarian cultural revolution and took up ideas on how to start their own revolution. The Khmer Rouge was making progress gradually up until 1970. By this time, two major occurrences happened. One was led by General Lon Nol when he removed Prince Norodom Sihanouk from office and aligned Cambodia with the United States. The second major occurrence was a massive assault of a bombing invasion of Cambodia by the United States. During the bombings, Vietnam took the advantage of setting up bases to regroup and to stock supplies. Many believed the bombings would end the Vietnam War, however, it roused up the Khmer Rouge. Pol Pot left the Viet Cong and North Vietnam to fight without him, while Paul used this time to focus on training and recruiting. People were not able to join the Khmer Rouge anymore. Government workers, teachers, officials, and people with an education were evicted. An important ethnic group in Cambodia, the Chams, were forced to dress a particular way. Pol Pot began to consider himself as brother number one, and was the leader of the uprising. The fall of Cambodia started on April 17, 1975, after the Civil War of Vietnam. The leaders of the Khmer Rouge called themselves Angkor Paravot. When the Khmer Rouge took over Phnom Penh, they ignored human life. During the fall of Cambodia, Pol Pot managed to kill over 2 million people, half because he bombed the country. The Khmer Rouge suppressed massacres and killed innocent people, ranging from leaders, farmers, officials, and people involved in the Khmer Rouge. Since there were a large amount of people deceased, Phnom Penh became known to have a killing field. The killing fields are located in Seng Kat Cheong Ik, Phnom Penh, Cambodia. The reason the Khmer Rouge took place was because Paul wanted Cambodia to be free of its government. Paul disregarded the people's cries and forced them into labor. The people began to harvest day and night. Many died from this way because of malnutrition. Paul wanted everyone to be under his rule. He assassinated every person who disregarded his orders. The S-21 is the famous building, which was a prison where Cambodians were brought to their death. Paul has reached his peak of cruelty, killing more than 2 million Cambodians and forcing them into labor. However, by the end of 1977, Vietnam and Cambodia were in war. Tens of thousands of Cambodians were sent to fight the battle, and thousands were killed. The Khmer Rouge leaders, including Paul, fled to the west, while the Vietnamese troops fought their way into Cambodia. Vietnam captured Phnom Penh on January 7, 1979. The Vietnamese tried to make a new government in Phnom Penh, which was the People's Republic of Kampuchea. The People's Republic of Kampuchea was led by Heng Samrin. Paul and the Khmer Rouge rejoined forces with Prince Norodom Sihanouk in 1982. They were kicked out of China after the Cambodian Civil War. The United Nations gave assistance to the Khmer Rouge in Pol. From 1979 to 1990, the United Nations began to consider them as the honorable and real representatives of Cambodia. By 1999, the Khmer Rouge has diminished because the leaders have either died, been arrested, and lacked a part in the royal government of Cambodia. However, the legacy remains in the country. Because of the millions dead in the killing fields, the reminder of what Pol Pot has done is unforgettable. Those who survived the regime are traumatized and are left widowed and orphaned. Several 100,000 Cambodians fled the country to be away from the cause of their mental health. Large portions of Cambodians have mental problems due to the loss of family members and because their spirits have diminished. Pol Pot was one of the worst leaders in history and have left a big legacy for Cambodia to face.